Hi, I'm James Johnson, founder and CEO coach. Welcome to Peer Effect, the podcast where your peers will tell you what's unlocking their 10 million plus business. In today's episode, Jeevs and I explore how to choose the right coach for you. Remember to hit the subscribe button before we get started. And now on with the show. So Jeevs, welcome to the show.
Thanks, James. Great to be here.
So, this is you deal with founders all the time in your role at VC. But first of all, before we dive into what we're talking about today, what got you to this point? What's your origin story?
I have the privilege of working with founders all day, every day in my current role. So I'm currently working the people and talent platform role at Octopus Ventures, whereby I support primarily our B2B software and AI businesses, all the way from kind of seed stage up to Series B, Series C, so a wide range, and kind of supporting the founders along that journey on all things people and talent related. So what we found the biggest value add there is making sure they get the right people in the right roles, get the right roles scoped out first, and then get the right people in at those kind of leadership levels. And a lot of the work is also around supporting our leaders and our founders to be the best leaders that they can be. And that may look different at seed stage to obviously kind of later stage, kind of being there along every step of the way and getting them ready for the next fundraise is kind of how we look at it. Previously, prior to this role, I've always been in an operator position. So I was at a B2B payments unicorn company, kind of from pre-Series A, looking after the talent acquisition there, and had a bit of a dabble with founder life myself prior to that, starting up a recruitment company. Not VC.
But that must give you quite at least an appreciation of what founders are going through.
Yes. At a very kind of grassroots level, absolutely. There's so many kind of different pressures and expectations that come, obviously, once you've got VC backing. But I feel like actually having been on the other side, actually probably more from my operator role within this kind of scale up that I just mentioned, kind of seeing pre kind of outside funding to post outside funding, how that changes the dynamics internally and the pressures that can put on the leadership teams as well. So here to support them on all of those kind of things, while still working kind of through the lens of the VC as well at the same time.
Do you find it's kind of you guys reaching out proactively on the leadership side, or do you find a lot of the founders are coming to you going, what can I do?
Yeah. So, you get kind of a range here because you've got some founders who have been there, done that, founded a successful company in the past, or not successful, but got the war wounds and all the lessons. And then you have really, really fresh green founders. I think something that, a lot of founders realize right from the beginning is the value. They've probably done this through hiring someone really great or getting a co-founder on, and all of the things that can unlock and the time that can save them. I think when we're doing our due diligence kind of pre-investment, I do try to spend time with the founders, at least one of them if there are multiple, to see the kind of questions that are coming up and ask them, what are your top of mind kind of queries at the moment, or things that you're trying to solve in terms of people and talent, and you can get a gauge on how they're thinking about it. I think quite rightly, a lot of the time founders are just heads down trying to get stuff done. And so a lot of the people and talent and leadership things can feel kind of on the scale important, but not urgent until they are and you're in crisis mode. So I think that's where we can be more proactive and say, hey, we've worked with other companies at this stage. The pattern is that normally this starts to crumble at this stage. Let's help you get ahead of that. And that's not, I wouldn't expect founders to always kind of have that in mind when they're trying to do a million other things on the ground that are urgent today. But you'd be surprised. I think even kind of very early stage, kind of fresh founders do really understand the value often of the people around them. I think that there are some kind of patterns that we see more recently. I've kind of started noticing of, for example, hiring people who kind of have done this before and can kind of come in and like not need too much training and not need too much hand holding and things like that, as opposed to bringing people in just kind of for a good attitude and they'll just get it done. Because a lot of the times founders obviously probably built their business with like bringing friends in or bringing family members in, and everyone kind of mucks in. And actually, how do you kind of professionalize from that is one of the things that we really kind of proactively try to look at as well.
You're clearly more persuasive than me. I find that founders, most of the times I work with, are kind of 6 months into whatever pain they're looking to solve. And you go, although I wish I'd done this 6 months ago, But if you
Yeah.
talk to exactly the same person 6 months ago, I haven't really experienced the pain enough here to truly appreciate the help that I need.
100%. And I think another thing is also by the time a founder comes to me and like if we're talking about coaching, says to me, I think I need a coach. I'm kind of like, oh, siren, like alarm bells, because they're probably already past, it's probably because it's such a pain already. I think quite rightly, again, they have limited time and limited resources. Having a coach or bringing that kind of that kind of support in, same as kind of reaching out to me and asking me for kind of like nice to have support, just doesn't even register because they're trying to do all the urgent stuff and fight all the fires right now. So that's probably why, James, by the time they get to you, they should have actually started working on it 6 months before. But, it's always kind of in hindsight, it's 2020, isn't it?
Yeah, sort of. I don't have time for it right now is both like the biggest signal that they need a coach right now, and often the reason why they don't choose to do it at that moment.
Exactly that. Yeah.
So we're going to talk to a bit about like how you choose a coach, because I think this is a question that comes up for you quite a lot. Is that right?
Yes, that is right. Yeah.
So how is that something that your sort of portfolio asks, or is that something that you're thinking about yourself?
So, as kind of we're very big on kind of encouraging founders to get coaches at Octopus. It's something I'm very proud of actually, and the whole team kind of rallied around that. And we did actually even have it as part of our term sheet. I think I mentioned this to you before. So,
It's amazing.
It's not in every single term sheet. It kind of depends on the deal, but we had stipulated that once you kind of receive funding from ourselves, you've got the capital then, but actually almost an insurance policy for us is let's make sure you've got the support to not burn through that cash straight away and to have the support, outside, independent, outside of your board, outside of your people and talent person, someone who is just for you as a founder. So stipulated a percentage or a small, very kind of nominal amounts of the investment that would be should be invested in coaching in the first 6 months of being in the portfolio. So we kind of start the conversation about have you got a coach right from the beginning, kind of proactively from our side. But then it is very much from the founders, like, how would I even know who the right person is? Like, anyone can call themselves a coach these days. It's so unregulated, Totally fair points. So one kind of rule of thumb, and I think, this is pretty standard, is that I would always say speak to kind of 3 coaches and get a feel for it. Because if you've never worked with a coach before, or even if you have previously, but now your needs have changed and the kind of support you want has changed, speak to as many as you can and have that kind of first intro chemistry call. But I think, founders might just like jump on and have a 20-minute call and then be like, yeah, they seem nice. So actually I try and prep them of like, what are you actually trying to work on? Like, what is the support you need? Because I think if you're trying to become a better CEO, say, or if you've got a very specific founder conflict that you want to work through, you might want a different type of coach. So what is exactly the support you need is something that I'd always prep them on to be thinking about. And then when you come off the call, how do you feel? Not just like, did you like them and do they feel comfortable, but did they challenge your assumptions on that call? Did they talk to you, did they make you think a bit differently? I think coaches, the best coaches that I've ever worked with, they don't provide certainty, but they kind of provide, you have some clarity in the moments and in the hours and days following the session, right? There's actually like really reflecting on that. I don't think you can choose straight after the call. You need to see kind of what it's got kind of going inside your own mind.
It sounds like the benefits of it feel like it can rate. It depends on the problem you're trying to solve. Is almost step one.
Yeah, exactly that. And I think so often this happens a lot. A founder will come to me and say, oh, Jeevs, do you have anyone in your network who I could speak to? So I say, yeah, let's talk about like what are you looking for support on? And actually what they're describing is they need a mentor or they need an advisor. So I'm thinking about how to structure my Series A. Okay, cool. Like actually I've got loads of people in my network who have done that, but they're advisors or they're mentors. That's not specifically a coach. Whereas if they're coming to me for something like, I just really want to get out of my own way, I need to become a better leader, or we've had loads of attrition recently and the feedback has been that my management style isn't working for the team, or I'm rubbing people up the wrong way, then perhaps I would introduce you to a coach. And I think that's one of the biggest education pieces. A lot of the time, and sometimes I only realize it once I've come off the call and I go out to my network to be like, oh, this is what they're looking for. And I'm like, they're describing an advisor there, because the kind of profiles that are coming to my mind are not a coach. It is more of a mentor and advisor, I think. And we've spoken about this obviously previously, but there is education to be done on what exactly a coach can provide as opposed to an advisor and a mentor. And if we're trying to find all of those things wrapped up in one green unicorn person, then potentially they're not going to be the best at all of those things. And actually what I really encourage founders to do is, like elite athletes, is have a bench of support. And on that bench should absolutely be a coach. Doesn't mean it needs to be the same coach throughout your whole journey. Probably not, probably a coach for different times. And, we all change, we're all evolving. But with that coach, make sure it's someone that you don't just feel comfortable with. They're supportive, but not necessarily comfortable, right? They're going to help you grow to be the best that you can be. But on that bench, also absolutely have advisors for different things that you need to do. So if it's going to be another fundraise and you need an advisor for that, get that person and they can advise you on what they would do, right? And then maybe you need a mentor for something as well. I think something that what I always kind of come back to and what I've been saying to our founders is, I think mentors and advisors can give you their map, but the job of a coach is to help you read the terrain and build your own map.
So something.
And that is the distinction. And you need both of those things are valuable. And I think a lot of our founders, and I'm not kind of boo-booing this because I think there is value in this, and a lot of the coaches that I do introduce just happen to be ex-founders themselves. But a lot of our founders really over-index on picking coaches that have successfully exited a business or have successfully grown a business to kind of 20 million upwards ARR, because that's our next stage and that's what I need. And that builds like instant credibility with our founders. And they think, you've walked in my shoes, you get it, you have a shared like lived experience. But actually, there's so much, I'm sure we'll delve into this a little bit more chat, but there's so much around that, which is like, absolutely, that coach can then sometimes put on their mentor hat or their advising hat and say, this is what worked for me. But at the risk of it becoming a bit of a disservice, because no two people are the same with it, and no two people have the same limitations. No business is the same. No market is the same, right? Even if it is in the same market, it's a different time. So just really kind of being cognizant of that and trying to guide founders to understand, actually, maybe someone hasn't been a founder in exactly your shoes, but they might be an exceptional coach, and that's actually going to be the unlock for you.
Yes, the example that came to mind is kind of like ex-professional footballers. I mean, there's historically been over-indexing on like, oh, they've been a great player, they've been a great manager, and I think there's plenty of examples where that doesn't hold. I mean, doesn't mean there aren't some great managers who were great players.
Yeah.
But like, there are a lot of great managers who were not great players.
Yeah,
Mourinho,
absolutely.
for example.
Yeah.
And I definitely think having that experience can help, as you say. Like, if you've been in the environment, you understand shorthand, and there's some empathy or just questions you don't need to ask, but potentially you're too close to it.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
I think what is the role that you need? What is the support that you need?
Exactly. And getting really, really clear on that. And that will change as well, obviously, right? So, and perhaps that coach won't be the right person, but I think being really, really clear of that at the beginning, and a good coach will know, should communicate whether they can help you or not. They might not be the right person to help you at that certain stage, or if it is something very tactical, such as, I don't know, I keep using this example, but I don't know how to structure my Series A, or I don't know how to do X, or I want support on this. They should be able to signpost you to, I'm not the right person to support you with this, but I've got these great mentors or advisors or anything. So I think as long as, again, it's like, I think also, and this kind of goes throughout the whole coaching journey, the founder can't just expect to just turn up, the coach fixes them, and then they leave the session. Like, it's got to be very much driven by the founder. And that starts right from the first chemistry call, with being really clear about what they want, and then kind of figuring out with the coach whether they're the right fit.
I think there's definitely a danger of people coming like, you hear the chat, it's like, I'm good at coach, it's really good. Therefore, I need a coach to be successful. Like, all successful founders have a coach, therefore I need a coach. I had one guy came to me and was like, I was at this event, I met someone that knows you, and I don't really think I need a coach, but he was like, I thought we could try it. And actually what he was looking for, we had one session, it was like, He was looking more for a consultant. It was more like, what's the solution? Well, I said, okay, well, here's the solution. It's like, oh, great, that's what I needed. Oh.
Yeah,
So that's not really coaching. You just learned on my business experience.
yeah.
Or by like my coach, I had two coaches for quite a long time. One was I had the same coach for 6 years, and he came from HSBC in the sales background, no founder experience, but like super smart. I trusted him. He asked me questions. He would challenge me. That helped me a lot. And then I also had a sort of a running coach who became kind of like a personal coach around personal habits and stuff with no real business background.
Mm-hmm.
But I took lots from both. So I agree. I don't think it has. And we both like through FCN, we know some, and Large Exchange, both of them, some amazing coaches that don't have that founder background, but are brilliant at focusing on certain aspects.
Absolutely. And I think there's two things there as well. I think also one, you mentioned about one of your coaches, well, both of your coaches, you trusted and you respected them, and you know, I think that is something that absolutely like cannot be diminished in terms of how important that is, because a coach might have a really impressive CV and have exited all these companies, but if you get on that chemistry call and you don't actually connect with them, you know, you have to be able to have this relationship of trust, and both ways, right? And so I think that's something that founders, all of our founders, they love data. They love like what makes sense on paper, but it's like there is actually just something that's like intuitive and more subjective, and you're only going to know that once you put maybe in the chemistry call, or you know, you might get it wrong and after a couple of sessions it doesn't work out, and like, that is also fine. And that's what I always say, you know, again, a good coach isn't going to force you to be there, because you know they want to be adding value as well. So I think that is really, really important. And then my second point, I totally skipped my mind, it'll come back to me.
Well, I'll throw a point onto the pile then if I can. I think that chemistry, I go back to that being important. I really think it's important because I think you need on both sides to be excited about it. And you both need to be, I think a coach is the only true peer relationship that you have in your life. Because I think every other relationship you have, there is some element of a power game going on. That's not really a bad thing, it's just how it is. Even with like family members or a partner, or there are some things you don't want to share, you want to present. But with a coach, you almost need to give your whole self to it.
Absolutely.
And if you're not feeling that sort of emotional engagement or like safety, respect, enjoyment, excitement, it's not really going to be, I think it's very hard to bring your best self to that on both sides. So I think if a coach feels that they're not bringing value, they should recuse themselves or not enjoying it. Like if they can't bring that kind of unconditional positive regard, they should be removing themselves from it as well. And that's fine.
Absolutely. And I think also for the founder themselves, they should really be analysing kind of after every session, like, well, if they're clear on what they want support on and what success would look like in 6 months, if they were to work with this coach for 6 months, actually kind of coming out of each session and being like, how have I come away feeling from that? Like, how am I thinking differently? How is this showing up? And, you know, beyond that, don't just kind of turn up for the session every week or every other week, whatever it might be, and then just like, oh, you know, because then you can actually see how it's progressing. I think that is particularly difficult for founders that haven't had coaches before, because after a few sessions, they're like, oh, I don't feel any different. It's a bit like, I don't know if you meditate, James, but you know, like when you start meditation, you're expecting this like, whoa, I'm going to be so different, like something massive's going to click for me, and then you're doing it for a couple of months and you're like, nothing's happening. I think it's actually just being really clear on like tactically how you would be wanting to feel different or think different or react differently to things, and that's what you're working on with your coach, and kind of being able to almost quantify that so that you feel confident that you are working with the right coach. I've remembered my other point, by the way.
Go for it. Let's go back to point 2.
I was going to say, there's that other point of like, if the CV is really impressive and you're working with this coach who has coached, I don't know, all of the unicorn founders in the UK and Europe over the last however many years, and they've built this really successful empire. I think you mentioned kind of that peer-to-peer element, which I think is so important. I think you can really tread into dangerous territory if there's a bit of like hero worship going on, or kind of like my coach, you know, that there is that power dynamic. And I've actually seen that play out in some ways. And then you just become like the coach, everything the coach says is just right. And then you totally lose. And actually, I think the best coaches help a founder to really connect with like They have built this business from scratch. They are the only ones that know all of the context and know their own limitations, and enabling them to kind of, be their own like guide, but with that peer-to-peer support instead of, I know better, I've done it before, which a good coach would.
And that's when you start drifting more from coaching into mentoring. If you ask, like, what do you think I should do on a regular basis, and you be getting the answers, you are drifting away from a coach relationship. I do think this idea of the purity of coaching not giving answers. I don't think educational experience is true. I do think at times you do have to give an opinion. You do have to share stuff. You can have a point of view. It's just if that's a regular point, it's becoming like your game plan rather than their game plan. Which, going back to your map thing, it's kind of like, if it's not founder centric and it's not about having the founder be the best version of them, then that's starting to drift away from coaching.
Yeah, that's spot on. You can also you can contain it quite easily as a coach, and they say, are you happy for me to share, what I've done in the past, and put on your mental hat, and then take it off again and get back into coaching. James, I'm curious, like, I think, when I'm saying this to founders, they're like, yeah, but if I could have someone who could also give me advice, then obviously that's going to be more valuable if they're also a good coach. So how have you had these conversations before, and kind of like, how have you managed that?
So I suppose I do have the founder background, and I do. So I think the journey for me has been, I started off going, oh, well, coaching is pure like questions. Don't offer anything.
How we're trained.
It is how we're trained. And I think it's a really good training because it's not a muscle that you use. And when you come into it, you're so predisposed to give an opinion or give an answer. So I think removing that for 3 years is a really good practice. But I think at some point, it is helpful to know when to go in. And the framing that I was taught, which I really like, is the idea of, it's called invisible coach. But I forget the 4 different levels. But you go all the way from invisible coach to visible coach.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go a bit into each, but you want to be spending like maybe 80% of your time in invisible coach, and maybe like 5% invisible coach, like in the most extreme. Like, I think this, like, I think you're making a mistake, or can I offer that this is a bad idea, and I think you need to build up lots of capital and trust to deploy it. But I think if you deploy it too often, you start again crushing the. So I think to answer your actual question, I think that in my experience, what people think they want out of coaching and what they actually helps them is different. And I definitely think in terms of that building credibility, that initial kind of like, can I help you? Being able to say, I've done this myself, it's helpful. But I now talk more about what I've done for my clients and what I've done for myself. I think that is more relevant, but I've been doing it for like 6 years. So I have more like case studies to show, like, I've helped this person do this. But I think allowing founders to discover themselves what coaching is quite helpful. So I suppose I'm not really answering, I'm not sure, but I do think in terms of that selection, having that background is credible. I wouldn't actually use that background as much as a founder would think I would during coaching, because I don't think that's helpful. But I wouldn't even have that conversation up front, because I just let them see the impact after the first 3 months. And then, I'm making progress. And they wouldn't really think about how much. But I have given myself more permission as I become more experienced to deploy other client experience, my own experience, challenge, and step more easily into advisor or mentor, or somebody in provocateur.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think sometimes actually, almost not giving the advice would be a disservice, not giving the data of what you've seen before or what you're seeing with other clients, and kind of that pattern recognition, or things that have worked and haven't worked. Sometimes not sharing that data feels more of a disservice. So I kind of try to say, like, okay, this is the training, but actually I do think in this instance, I'm going to ask whether they want to know kind of what other people have been working with, or what I've seen across the portfolio, or whatever it might be. But yeah, I think that actually, what I find, I've been a founder, but not in like a tech-based VC-backed company, but a lot of the really useful nuggets that I have, or kind of quick unlocks that might, like tactical unlocks, are from my experience of now coaching lots of other leaders and lots of other founders in similar positions and different similar stages. But I think there's times when, you know, the training goes out the window and you just want to jump in and be like, I know the answer to this, and actually holding back and holding space for that silence, which becomes less and less uncomfortable, but I'm still working on it. And then suddenly, like in the next 5 minutes, you see like the biggest unlock, and I'm like, thank goodness I didn't speak. I would have cut it, you know?
I think that's like, I think I know the answer. Often you don't have all the data you need for that necessarily to be the answer. So the answer two things. Sometimes the answer they come to is different to your answer, which is fine. And sometimes it's the same answer, but it lands so much better if a client comes to it themselves. Like, I'm sure we can all think of examples where we told the same thing like 100 times by our parents, our friends, whatever, and then we suddenly experience the pain and have well, that's how it works. Everyone around is going, we've been saying that for like the last 3 years.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah.
But I think founders are, one of the jobs of a coach is just to help founders see how amazing they are.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think there's so much like negative like narrative around it. It's sort of pressure on themselves. It's like, I need everyone else first, and this has to be such a tough journey. I think just provide a safe space for founders to think and reflect and like not give their first thought to someone else and just share if they're having a really tough time. Like I think even from a non-strategic point of view, that peer relationship is so valuable because you're giving so much energy to other people, so much just to have someone that's actually focused on you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think kind of, obviously I'm kind of in my mind thinking of the split between my role as the people and talent kind of portfolio support and partner at Octopus. And I do find like I'm in a really privileged position because I build real relationships of trust with the founders, but also very aware that they are still very aware that I'm employed by the VC. So how open that relationship can be is kind of, you know, but we do get really into it. And I think it is a very special relationship that perhaps an investor director wouldn't be able to have because they're on the board. But then I really also like cherish my coaching, like pure coaching relationships, because I think that is a space where as a coach, exactly as you said, like our role is to come in and see the founder or see the client as the best that they can be. And then bring them to that through, you know, like kind of come with that energy, because they might come in and they've had the worst week and like everything's falling apart, and we have a container that actually is like, we're not going to meet you there, we'll meet you here, and then we'll bring you to where we are. So I think it's such a kind of nuance, and that's not something you're going to necessarily get from a mentor or an advisor, right? That's not their job.
It's not their job. And it's like, I don't think as a manager you can be a coach. You can bring coaching skills to a relationship, but if you can fire someone, you can't be the manager. You can't be their coach. And it's likewise, sometimes VC partners go, I can coach them. It's like, you can't coach them. Like, again, that's not a peer relationship. Like,
and that's not their job. Yeah, exactly.
It's not their job. You're not there to coach them.
Exactly. You wouldn't be able to do your job properly as as an investor director if you're genuinely their coach. I see it quite a lot. A lot of chair people, kind of how a founder will describe their chairperson is like, they're also my coach. I'm like, they just like, by the very nature of it, can't be. So they need to choose whether they're your coach or they're chairing your board, because the two things just don't, they are actually mutually exclusive. Of course, in any relationship we have, we can coach each other, right? You can ask the right questions, but exactly as you're saying, it needs to be that pure peer-to-peer relationship and dynamic for there to be that trust. And you shouldn't be able to be fired by your coach. Exactly. I think that's a really good starting point.
So actually then, before we go back to like, well, how do you choose one? It sounds like, so one is being clear what you are looking for. 2, checking chemistry. 3, looking for stuff which is, I suppose, not over-indexing on a previous experience match.
Yeah.
Which I suppose almost goes back to hiring, doesn't it, in some ways? Like, I think when we hire, we over-index on previous experience.
Yeah.
And actually it's much more about values alignment, underlying competency, like all of that stuff. And the experience is just like sometimes a poor indicator of fit.
Exactly. Or like the big logo. is sometimes a poor indicator of fit, right? But it's a quick way for your brain to be like, trust, and credibility. Don't get me wrong. I do, of course, I know many, and I often recommend many kind of ex-founder coaches, including yourself. And I think that there is obviously intrinsic value in that. It's a certain type of person. They've got that grit and determination. They have walked in similar shoes to a founder. So I totally get that. But I do think, yeah, it's the over-indexing part. And I also equally work with and recommend phenomenal coaches who have never been a founder themselves, but have worked with many different. I think that's more of an indicator. You know, who have you worked with? I think that's a better question.
That's a great question.
What types of clients do you work with? Do you have testimonials on them? What types of unlocks have you been able to achieve with them? I think that is a lot more important. We should be asking even ex-founder coaches those exact same questions, because that's what will actually determine whether someone's a good coach or not, more than kind of their CV.
I think that's a great point, because again, it's not to say that people who are ex-founders can't make good coaches, but it makes people who are ex-founders do make good coaches. Like, what have you done as a coach that leads me to think that you can do this again?
Exactly. And I think the value of coaching shouldn't be measured by how great the coach's ideas were in a session, but instead how much the client has kind of been able to improve their way of thinking, or kind of like got to an answer themselves in a session, if you're looking at it kind of on a micro session by session kind of success metric.
That clarity. Yeah. Also, I think going back to what you raised quite early on, like what is the problem that you're trying to solve? Because we both there are certain people I work with as coaches, like when it comes to, I don't know, co-founder dynamics. I know some coaches who are like, that's what they focus on. They just take it to a depth which is just like, wow. It's kind of like, you're doing this all the time. You think about the theory around this. You're experiencing it on a regular basis. Like, you understand this to a depth that I don't.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say I can't do it, but like just the rigor and patterns and thing. Like, what could be, I don't know, mental well-being or balancing, like, so with a young family, or like, I do think that's what one thing that's interesting doing, like founder coach network, is just working with other very experienced coaches and just understanding actually you can fragment even founder coaches into, and it's not just by stage, it's by what they really, really care about. Like, for me, that's probably like management and execution, and what that means, like founder and management team, which also like is previous experience brought into coaching. But when you really talk to someone about, if you're clear on your problem, you go to, they should be able to say, okay, I had a client call with someone on Friday, and they had found me through like some online recommendation, and I was just laughing as they were just smiling as they were talking about stuff. I said, I'm going to show you something in a second when you've finished outlining this, which is going to basically mirror all the things you were just talking about. Like, it's almost like what, like, I have this problem, this problem, this is, and it was. It's just like, that's not to do necessarily previous founder. That's just like really, you really understand what your sweet spot is.
Yes, exactly.
And so I think if you can really define your pain point, then a coach should be able to really show how their sweet spot matches your pain point, and that's not about background necessarily.
Absolutely. It is that repetition, I think, actually finding, and I, again, like, get it in my role at Octopus, but also in my coaching, the same patterns that come up and all of those things, which help me to be better at Octopus, because I can then proactively be like, this is going to come up probably, so we should get ahead of this. But yeah, and it should be context kind of agnostic in terms of coaching, right? So even if you have been a founder, you could very successfully coach a founder who is now kind of exiting at Series D and or going public, because actually that's not the point. It is more about kind of understanding them as a person, their own limitations, and if you work for them for a while as well, kind of, you really do get to understand kind of under the hood what those people are battling.
The under the hood thing's important, because I think as a coach, I think one of the things people don't think about when coaching is how much of the self-work or deep work they probably need to do. It's often the business problem is a personal problem. The personal problem is a business problem. And if you can't build that relationship and trust, you're not going to open up on some of that personal stuff. and therefore you're not going to get the massive ultimate impact, which is why also I like working with people long term, because you can really change stuff.
Yeah. I think another thing I would say is I'm thinking about a specific coach that I know, and she is phenomenal, and she hasn't been a founder herself, but she's now worked with like hundreds of Series B plus founders. She's worked with some people in our portfolio, and the amount of trust that these founders have in her is really kind of promising and really great, because initially when I was kind of looking at all the different coaches out there and speaking to loads and loads, I was like, oh, I don't know how I would kind of position this to our founders, because you don't have any kind of operator experience at that level. But what really helps is that founders really trust other founders. Like a recommendation from another founder goes a lot further than a recommendation from anybody else. And I think for some coaches, there's also now like a bit of a FOMO, like, oh, well, my peer, this other founder worked with this coach, and they've just like, that you can see the change in them, and they are, operating in such a different way, and their business has gone from X to Y, sorry. And I think that is another way also, I think, as a coach, building that portfolio of like testimonials and references that you can easily rely on, because it is so subjective. Obviously, that doesn't mean then that it's going to be the right person for another founder, because there is all the other elements, chemistry, etc., etc. But I do think being an ex-founder opens the door more quickly, and like in terms of credibility, like that's probably going to get you that first call. But post that, I think everyone's kind of on a level playing field if a founder really understands what they want from a coach.
Yeah. I suppose so there is, like with all things, there is some responsibility on the family to do this right. It's like that. There's not a magic bullet of just going, I'll just go and ask your VC, or go and ask your peers, or
Yeah, 100%. And I think
Claude.
Ask Claude, exactly. Or Claude can be your coach, actually. Who needs coaches? But I think what's most disheartening for me is when I feel very passionately that someone could really, I think we could all really do with coaching. I'm always working with a coach myself, or multiple coaches. But you get a founder in front of a coach, and they're kind of just going into it because they've been recommended by their VC that they should. And then they have a few sessions, they're like, I actually don't rate coaching. And then that they're not going to be an advocate for coaching for their leadership team. And it's just like, you actually just need one person to become an advocate for it. And, maybe even kind of add it as a benefit to their employees or whatever it might be. But when people come to me and they're like despondent or a bit like negative about coaching, having had some sessions, it's like, you went into those sessions not knowing what you wanted. And it's not for the coach to make sure that you've had a wonderful session every session. Like, you do have to drive this. And you'll get out of it what you put in. I think that for me is worst case scenario, because then people actually become detractors of coaching. And I think it's like actually that prep before, and making sure that people are really bought in before, you suggest that they go and have the chat.
I mean, it's a good point. I'm not sure you can convert people into, if they're doing it because they feel they ought to or they've been told to. I'm not sure they're in the mindset to take ownership of the journey.
Absolutely.
And if they won't take ownership of it, like you as a, I suppose there's difference between a sports coach and a business coach. Like, maybe you go to a sports coach, they're going to sort of, as per every great Hollywood sort of training montage, really push you and hold accountability and like. But that's not a peer relationship. That's like a teacher or a trainer rather than a coach thing. And I think I do find sometimes you'll come to coaching with almost use coaching as a procrastination tool. It's like, oh, when I fix this, then I can be great. It's like, no, you do need to take action now. This is not just a talking thing. It's like, you will have reflections, but you do need to do stuff. And if people are not willing to take ownership of that, I think that's the thing I probably find the most frustrating as a coach. Like, I work very well with action-oriented founders. I'm very good at helping them get clarity, and then they take action.
Yep.
I think some coaches might be better at like really help people drive forward. I just really strongly feel like that is not my role.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think probably worth in this asking yourself as a founder, are you doing this because you really believe in it and want to, or doing it because you feel you ought to? And someone says,
yeah,
are you looking for someone to fix you?
Yeah, exactly that. Or are you looking to fix, like to grow yourself and to get some support from someone who can kind of be your partner in that and be your peer in that? I think this is something that I kind of toed and froed with a bit when we were building out our coaching hub, Octopus, because some VCs do provide investment for founders, and they will pay for X number of coaching sessions. We don't do that. It is very much that you need to invest in it yourself financially from the funding. But I do think that actually, for me, I'm fine with that because it does mean that then people, founders have to decide whether this is worth how much they're going to pay the coach for them, instead of it just kind of like it is being paid by someone else. You've got no skin in the game and you just turn up. I think that really kind of changed the dynamic of the whole thing. And they're less likely to just turn up and waste their own time and the coach's time if they're having to pay for it.
Coaching is an investment. I mean, it is not for a good coach. It's not an insignificant amount of money. But if you find the right coach, you can make your year payment back like in a session. It's kind of like you make a difficult decision quicker. You've saved a person's salary for a month, or you've made a better decision, or you grow faster, or you find a new client. Like it can regularly point to sessions like, okay, well let's just paid for the year. That's like that's stuck up enough times. Like actually, in terms of you're getting from, I don't know, let's say a business worth 10 million to 100 million. Like that, and probably quite importantly, actually enjoying the journey and not feeling isolated and not feeling burnt out.
Yeah,
that's actually probably worth a lot more money than you are actually paying. So I think coaching can either be very expensive or it can be very cheap, depending on finding the right match.
Yeah, absolutely. And that whole point on the ROI of it, I think, again, very data-driven founders wanting to know, okay, if I do 6 sessions and what's the ROI on that? Like this is a big investment, and actually, like some of it is like not quantifiable in terms of, as you just said, getting to your next milestone, but feeling better, feeling not burnt out, feeling like you weren't isolated in that, you were supported, being able to react better to stresses, being able to manage people better. How do you kind of put a number on that? And I'm not sure if you've kind of worked out the magic equation, James, but that is something that I often get pushed back on from founders, and it's a fair point. They want to make sure that if they're going to invest this time and money, that they know exactly what they're going to get out of it, which is so nuanced.
I mean, there's so little research on this, but the stats say it's a 6 times ROI on coaching. On the last study done, I think it was done like 10 years ago. And there's only one big study that we've done on it. But instinctively, I think it's higher. Like, I think particularly team like Series A, Series B founders at least, the value of getting to that next milestone is so high in terms of amount raised, the valuation you get. Like, it's not just getting to the next milestone, it's getting to the next milestone in a good shape, because otherwise you're squeaking your next raise or you're blitzing it. And even just the difference in that is millions, like tens of millions. Like, if you're spending 20k, 30k a year on coaching, on a 2-year thing, let's say you spent 60k on coaching and additional support, and your next raise is 10 million pounds more, 20, like, those are not crazy multiples in terms of what the difference that you see, or just not hitting it at all, that support.
Yeah, exactly. It's the where would you be if you hadn't had the coaching? Like what would you not know? You kind of don't know what you don't know until you start it, right?
But I suppose that's often what will come to you, like almost that 6 months in, but you say, oh, actually, I can now see, I've got enough data to see I'm not on track. I've got enough data to see that if I continue this path, I'm either going to squeak my next raise or I'm going to miss it. I need to fix this.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah. Can you fix me?
Yeah. When can you start?
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Okay, so it feels like, just to summarize, we've got be clear what you want. Don't be blinded by the experience. Get testimonials and ask for relevant case sort of examples of people through a similar situation. What else have we got?
Find someone who is supportive as a coach, but not necessarily comfortable.
Yes.
You don't just need like a cheerleader pep talker. That is part of it. But you need someone who's going to help you grow.
Yeah, but actually one of my clients was his favourite session ever was when I told him he was talking bullshit, because he had this narrative in his head around you couldn't hire great people. And I was like, you are amazing. Like you've raised great things. You can persuade people to almost do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Why does that not apply to hiring?
Yeah.
And actually, the next 2 hires were amazing and unlocked. And it's like, I'm so glad. I always accepted that feedback from no one else.
Yeah. Yeah. And
That's
that's right.
That's the trust. That's a year and a half's worth of sort of relationship, allowing you an alignment just to go, that is nonsense.
Yeah, exactly.
Chemistry.
And I think kind of following on from that is like not being worried to kind of pivot and be like, this isn't working after, I don't know, give it a good go, but that's fine as well, then try another thing. Like, don't let yourself just hate coaching or think it's a waste of time. There's plenty of coaches out there. You will find the right match.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, Jeeves, thank you so much. I loved talking this through.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much, James.
Remember to subscribe if you want more actionable insight from founders scaling now. See you next week and happy scaling.